the reason that we have an ERP system is so that we can accommodate business intelligence. Without the ability to do BI and to do especially data mining and data analytics, the trouble that we go through to set up an ERP system kind of seems like outsized. It seems like an enormous amount of work for nothing. And what we hope to do this morning is show you what some of the different tools and some of the different things you can do. We're going to have, it's going to be divided into two sections. The first section is the super boring lecture part, and the more exciting side is the back side, where we actually show companies and what companies do to explicitly use BI. And the company we'll be focused on is Salesforce.com. How many of you have heard of Salesforce.com? If you'll chat back with a Y or a no. Okay, that's good. It's interesting. I've had a few people that have heard of it. We tend to call or talk about SAP and Oracle like they're just the champions and dominion of everything. But of course, you have Microsoft Dynamics, which has been trying for a couple of years to kind of grow. But in addition to that, you also have Salesforce.com, and we'll talk more about Salesforce here in a bit. So, business intelligence. Let's look right quick. What I'm going to do is hopefully. I'm waiting. Okay, if everybody will watch this video, we will come back after watching this video. I've had feedback from you that it's not good to stream it through. So if you watch this video, please, when the first person has seen the video, if they will chat, I am finished. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recorder right now and turn it on when we get that first notification back. Okay, I'm starting to get some feedback that people are done. We're going to go ahead and pick up where we left off. Let me see. I'm going to test your powers of observation. Saba, Miss Basiri, are you able to pop on right quick with your microphone? Oh, yeah, that would be a good idea, wouldn't it? Let's try it now.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
How are you enjoying Pajama University?
Great. I love it.
Now, you don't have a final. When's y'all's ethics final?
We have a paper that's due on Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be sensitive to that. So you watched the video. Did you notice? Did they mention mobile devices?
Oh, Lord. I took notes. I know that, they said, I think so, yes, because they said that you could, access it anytime, anywhere, and you can use, a web browser, or you can use, it said you can analyze it on the go or access a web browser, so I believe so.
Okay, yes, some of your
I think there's a picture.
Your colleagues are typing in yes, so they did mention mobile devices. Have you ever been in a relationship where you notice that what's not said is more important than what is said?
What's not said is more, yes.
I know I have. I know I have. How many times did the words social media get said?
Honestly, well, I heard social. I can't remember social media being said ever.
Well, I'll give you a quick count. It's 0. They didn't mention social media once. Why do you think that is?
Maybe because they have their solutions of SAP and they don't want to put light on another software or media outlet. I'm not sure.
Okay. Hey, Saba, I appreciate you piping in this morning.
Thanks.
Mr. Sam Kellogg, can you pipe in this morning?
Yeah, I'm here.
How you doing this morning?
Good.
Good. Isn't A 3-week compressed course the best?
Yeah, it is.
Why do you think they don't mention social media?
That's a good
How
question.
many times have you mentioned that you can run 100 meters in 8 seconds?
I don't know that I could, so.
I think that's our answer. SAP and Oracle are not very good at integrating social media data. Okay, and that's an important component when you're buying a BI module. It's really important to note that SAP and Oracle, and I'm not saying this definitively forever and ever and ever and ever. I'm saying right now in 2015, SAP and Oracle do not have strong social media platforms. So if you are trying to do business intelligence on how many times your name has been mentioned in Facebook and Google search today, this is something that SAP and Oracle don't do very well. Who do you think might do a good job of it?
Salesforce.com.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you piping in this morning. Yeah,
Yeah.
Salesforce does a really good job with social media. They do a bad job with other stuff. So this is not a Salesforce pep rally or anything like that. But just be mindful of what different packages' strengths are and what they do well and what they don't do well. You'll get a chance to compare a little bit later a demonstration by Salesforce. So let's go back to BI. These are some of the common definitions associated with BI. One of them is the ability to learn, understand, or deal with new and difficult situations. Keep in mind that when you're in business, seemingly the only thing you will encounter is new and difficult situations. Your ability to analyze those situations and try to figure out what's happening, and ideally what you need to do, is a core functionality of BI. The ability to apply knowledge and manipulate your environment. Uh, in business, there are companies that are being subjected to change, and then there's companies that are basically subjecting their competitors to change. You need to decide pretty quickly which side of those you're going to be on. If you are unsuccessful at controlling your environment, or at least imparting, your will in the marketplace, what happens is you will find yourself very quickly out of the marketplace. In big time business, this is a very common dynamic where the ability of companies to manipulate their environment and force others to adjust to them is very dominant. It's something that it's a competitive advantage that you can exercise, that it's either happening to you or you're causing it to happen to other companies. BI answers questions like, what do we do well? What are the things that we do well? What do we do well by geographic area? What do we do well by individuals with bachelor's degrees? That segmentation of information. What do we do badly? It's, this from being a student, that what you know about yourself in terms of what you do well and what you don't do well is just as important as knowing what you do well. What you do really, really well at times is much less important than what you do badly. If you're able to ascertain what it is that you need help with as a company, that has the most value sometimes. What's your mix? How do your strengths and weaknesses come together, and what business opportunities are there out there? Are you able to data mine your own information with your BI module and see what it is you potentially could exercise a competitive advantage over? Keep in mind that the information that comes into your database is not just from your ERP system. You get information, native information, from inside your system. You get information from other ERP systems that you interface with, but you also have information sources where you can buy information. You can buy information from Facebook. You can buy information from Google. You can buy information from Twitter. These social media platforms, for example, sell their information. That's how they make their money. That's the reason that these social media sites are, quote, free, unquote. And how can you make better decisions? In other words, if you're either making better decisions or worse decisions than your competitors, and what you want is your BI platform to be able to help you make those better decisions. BI covers and kind of focuses on three things: strategies, processes, and technologies. And you're trying to achieve knowledge about your company operations. Keep in mind that your company has a lot of disparate, distributed data. It's heterogeneous. I mean, you have information all over the place, and it tries to corral and bring some sense to this information that you have. You get a good example of this, of how business intelligence turns mass data into actual knowledge. An example of data is you have product A and product B, and you have customer Smith. Okay, so basically you know that you have a customer named Smith, and you know that you sell a product A and B, and that's pretty much all you know. Information is you know that customer Smith buys product A. Okay, so you know customer Smith buys product A, and that's good to know. I mean, it's interesting to know that customer Smith buys A unto itself. Now, knowledge is when you know that product A and B have an 80% sales correlation. This correlation between A and B means that when A is bought, 80% of the time B is bought. Okay, you see a lot of this dynamic with ice and beer, for example. You see it with different relationships. What's interesting is the relationships you would see between an independent factor and a dependent factor can be kind of wild. It has been pretty well documented that when people buy, specifically when males buy diapers, they also buy beer. And some retailers have gotten attuned to this, and it has a high sales correlation to where people put them together. What the type of information you know or you have to make a decision is if there's a high correlation between A and B, offer product B to customer Smith. Now in retail, that would mean putting B and A next to each other or close to each other. It might mean outside of retail that customer Smith is presented with the option of buying B, and they receive a sales pitch on why B is a strong decision, it's a strong purchase when you're buying A. Knowledge, though, and the decision point is knowing this information. There are companies that know that A and B have a high sales correlation, and there's companies that don't, and the ability to know is something that's strategic in BI. It's an example of some of the stages that exist in BI. At the far left here, we have batch, which batch basically is primarily, you have predefined queries. Batch is where we came from. Batch answers questions like what just happened. For those of us in accounting, we're very tuned in to what just happened. To a certain extent, financial statements are kind of an autopsy of what happened behind us. And you know, a long time ago, you would even have batch where you run the closing program or the closing routine, and it would close the books, and you would look backwards and see where you sat. The next one is on the analyzing stage is why did it happen? And this is where companies run ad hoc queries. Ad hoc just means on the spur of the moment queries. And what they would do is they're trying to answer, you know, why did it happen? We're starting to evolve into stage 3, and stage 3 is where we're starting to answer questions of what will happen. Okay, so we're starting to get into, I don't care about what happened in the past. I'm curious if we do. If we continue the way we are, what's going to happen? And how many green sweaters will we need this fall? And how much ice will we need to make this summer? Week by week, day by day. That type of predicting is kind of the domain of analytics. Operationalizing is what is happening underneath our feet right now. This is something that's only been possible in the last 8 to 10 years because the technology, the power that was needed for processors and the memory that was needed to hold all this, for the most part, didn't exist. SAP has a product called HANA. HANA is, I'm giving you phonetically how you spell it. It's H-A-N-A. Spell it right quick. Oh, go down here to the chat bar. But they have a product called HANA. And HANA, basically what it does is it gives you the ability to operationalize a lot of these decisions, and they happen right underneath your feet. Instead of going to the hard drive somewhere and storing it, it stores it in active memory. And that active memory is key because what it does is memory is just something that to a certain extent we've kind of, you know, made believe we understand. There's actually 3 kinds of memory in modern computing. Let me put them up here. There's L1, L2, and L3. Okay, L1 is memory that the computer needs right now in real time, and it's the fastest of the 3 memories. The in-between is obviously the in-between, and L3 is faster than accessing the hard drive, but it's just short of the hard drive. So what companies will do is, or what manufacturers of computers will do, is they'll try to pack as much as they possibly can into L1 and L2. Keep in mind L1's a lot more expensive. The chipset associated with L1's more expensive. It runs hotter, which creates a problem as you're putting more and more things into storage. There's a lot more transactions. In some cases, close to 1 billion transactions are having to go through, and that heats up the chipset quite a bit. But L1, L2, L3 is the domain of memory. It's not just, we tend to talk about it as memory. Trust me, I just mean memory. But there's a lot more to memory than just the word. The very last one is event-based triggering. This is active warehousing. And it answers questions like, what do I want to happen? This is called prescriptive, okay? Let me type it up right quick. Sometimes people have a hard time understanding what I'm saying. Prescriptive, and that's stage 5. Prescriptive is just like it sounds, like when you go to the doctor and she does a physical or she does whatever she does, one of the things you want from her is a prescription. You want to change the future. You don't want her to tell you, you don't value her telling you how long you have left to live if there's something that can be done to fix it. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, what action should I take, A, B, or C? And if I was to take A, B, or C, how would it change the future? And this is a core component of BI. A data warehouse is usually where that's the most common architecture that exists for BI. And keep in mind that you could, in theory, run queries against a production database. Can someone pipe in with their microphone and tell me why you might want to not? Give me 2 good reasons that you do not want to ping and query the active production database. Okay, Leslie, at least I'm getting chat, if not microphone. All right, I'm going to have to pick on someone because no one will pipe in. And I realize some folks don't have microphones. Thu, can you pop in for me? Okay, we're waiting for you.
Hello?
Good morning. How are you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can
okay,
hear you
good.
perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Give me 2 good reasons not to actively ping the production database.
Hmm. Maybe just overload. And I mean, once it's working on something, it's working on it. So I mean, you probably should want to check when I guess it's done making something. I don't know.
Not bad. I realize everyone's a little sleepy, but that's good. That's good.
Yes.
Is your heart in your chest currently beating?
Yes.
Would it be kind of cool to turn it off and turn it on and see if it'll repower itself, just to kind of see? Wouldn't it be interesting from a medical perspective to turn it off using electrical signals and then see if it'll come on by itself?
No.
It would be kind of less than cool, right? I mean, you would want to do that as a thought experiment. You don't really want to turn your heart off. You don't want to shock your heart off and see if it'll come back on, right?
Right.
If your production database is up and it's running and it's clear of any integrity issues and it's servicing your business, is it a good idea to start pinging it and pulling stuff out of it and copying stuff and stuff like that?
When you say pinging, that means like you want it to send address to you, right?
Yeah, I'm using, thank you for that clarification. When I say ping, I'm using this word. And it means you start hitting the database and pulling stuff out of it.
Okay.
There's a principle in computing of leave well enough alone. Okay, and by that I mean the production database. If it's up and it's running, leave it alone. Okay, more than one company has run a query against the production database and done what to it? Corrupted it and broken it. Are you familiar with the phrase a broken database?
Is it the same as corrupted database?
A corrupt database. Are you familiar with the Starbucks? A couple of weeks, I guess 2 weeks ago now, Starbucks had their whole checkout system go down.
I don't drink coffee.
Well, I drink a lot of coffee. And I can tell you when Starbucks went down for the better part of 4 hours, it was very disruptive. So reason number one why you don't want to ping, by that I mean query, the active production database is you might bring it down. Okay.
Mm.
What if your production database has, oh, it's not unusual to have 12 trillion 12 trillion records. If your production database has 12 trillion records, do you want to query that, or do you want to pull out of it just that which you want to do BI on?
Just what I
Yeah,
need.
that's the
Just what
thing.
I want.
So you have a performance issue, and that's the second reason. When you start hitting the production database, it is so enormously large that what you do is you corrode performance. Thank you, Thu, for popping on. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Uh, you corrode uh, you corrode performance because it's so large and it consumes so much. It consumes so much time, and you don't want to corrode your performance. And that's another reason you use a data warehouse. A data warehouse is a subset of the production database. Uh, it's usually company-wide. It's a company-wide data pool, and it exists to make decisions. Okay, so copies of the production database are made on a. It's one of two architectures. One is you have continuous feeds. So there are SAP, or Oracle, Salesforce, where you have real live data that's constantly feeding into the DW, the data warehouse, and then you have some that's kind of batch, where on a periodic basis you bring it in. What companies are favoring more and more all the time is the live feed, and we'll show you an example of that here in a bit. A couple of things about data warehouses. This is basically what Bill Inman back in '96 was one of the pioneers in data warehousing. And one of the things he talked about a great deal was that it needs to be subject oriented. Okay, and by that it means it needs to revolve. A data warehouse needs to revolve around the subject that you'll be doing queries on, that you'll be doing data analytics on. It needs to be integrated. There can't be anything missing. From A to Z, everything needs to be in the data warehouse that is required. There's nothing more annoying than having significant components missing from your data warehouse, and then you can't do a query, or worse yet, your query is flawed. It needs to be time defined. That's what we mean by time variant. It needs to basically have enough information to where you can tell things by time. It's always funny. I was working with a client last summer, and they forgot to bring in time data, and basically the data warehouse is not that useful. And then of course bringing it in, and it just turns into a big hassle if you don't bring everything in you need. It needs to be non-volatile. What that means is it needs to be information that is somewhat static, that you're doing the BI on. The data can be changing and being fed and being updated, but the actual point at which the query is done, we can't have two different versions of the truth. This is his definition of subject-oriented, where it's guided by the view of the decision maker. You're trying to have it on the right subject. Integrated, we talked about. Time-oriented, it has to have a time dimension. So much of BI is related to how things are changing over time. And non-volatile, in other words, it's stored persistently, and we're not having stuff come in and out and stuff like that. Up until this point, to a certain extent, I always get a chuckle saying this because students, I don't get any feedback with people looking at me, of course, through this medium. But everything you've been kind of told to a certain extent is either been a lie or a gross exaggeration. Because we've talked a great deal about the database, the database. But the database actually has two different environments, or it has two different significant components to it. You have an online transaction processing environment, and you have the online analytic processing environment. The database actually has two different segments to it. Let's talk about the two different segments that will create this different BI. OLTP is optimized to get data into the database. It's for management, daily business. It processes just a small amount of data per transaction. It's not designed for analytics. It's designed for getting stuff in. Business critical availability is very important in OLTP, and the data updates online. So you have really you have real-time updating of this information. OLTP, if I back up here for a second, at the top here, it's transaction data. It's what you think of. We should think of it pretty well, because it's what we think of when we think of accounting. Accounting data tends to have these characteristics here on the left-hand side. That's very, very different from analytics processing, because OLAP, the portion of the database that is dedicated to OLAP, uh, is is optimized to get data out. Okay, it's for making decisions. It processes large amounts of data per transaction. So when we talk about data mining and data analytics, it's in the portion of the database that's dedicated to OLAP. It's less critical. Keep in mind that the type of analytics that's being done in the short term is not that critical. If you're doing some BI work and it can't be done today, then you can do it tomorrow. But today's revenue has to be booked today, and today's expenses need to be booked today, and that's where the OLTP is more important. OLAP, to the extent that data is updated regularly, it might be real-time feed, it might be batch, but you have to have some kind of regularity to the data that's being updated. Again, not updated in real time unless that's one of the choices that you make, like with something like Salesforce or SAP, whatever. Data is time dependent on OLAP. That's what we were talking about that a second ago, where we're trying to get information into the system. Okay, Dylan has a good question. What exactly are OLTP and OLAP? Let's back up one. If you see here, you'll see a definition. And on the far right-hand side is where I would draw your attention, where we have reports and we have business analytics and we have the SAP Business Warehouse. And these are fed by two different sections of the SAP ERP database. The online transaction processing is OLTP at the top, and that's the information that you need, all the time, accounting, day in, day out, minute in, minute out. OLAP, the environment at the bottom, online analytic processing, is what you use for business intelligence. So business intelligence pulls from the OLAP environment. Dylan, does that answer your question? Okay, just making sure. Hey, thanks for piping in. It's very difficult to get feedback on whether any of this is getting in. Continuing in the everything you've been told is a lie vein, we've talked about the SAP Business Warehouse. We've talked about it existing, the database existing, and feeding the business warehouse. Actually, the database, and I made allusion to this a second ago, is actually fed by a lot of stuff. It's fed by the core. In this case, we're talking SAP. You can include Oracle just as easily. The reason I use SAP is it's shorter than Oracle, which is kind of my laziness on my part, and it's easier for product specific here. So the SAP ERP core product feeds the database, and the SAP Customer Relationship Management, that's a module, feeds the database. And of course, here this SAP ... is all the modules that you have loaded underneath SAP ERP. They all load the SAP Business Warehouse. The one I want to draw your attention to is this last one at the bottom, non-SAP. Be very mindful that if you have an SAP solution, you can bring in data that is not native to SAP. It may come from another competitor's ERP product. It may come from social media. It may come from wherever. Now, SAP doesn't handle social media too tremendously well, but it does rudimentarily. On a rudimentary level, you can bring in some social media. And then what we're seeing increasingly is you may have like the National Weather Service, and the National Weather Service may have a database you subscribe to, and it gives you temperatures, and the temperatures are put in to your business warehouse. So there's a lot of different sources that can actually feed this business warehouse. That's a description, or the official description of business intelligence, and it's somewhat new. I mean, only in the last, I'd say, 12 years have we really had a lot of BI activity that's been used. One of the things you do with BI is you mine your own data. Okay, so you mine the data. If we back up here, everything that we put into this SAP Business Warehouse, we data mine and trying to draw meaningful knowledge from it. One of the things it exposes is where you're more profitable and where you're less profitable. Now, be careful when you're doing BI work and you're trying to ascertain, what's more profitable and what's less profitable. Be careful with, just simple assumptions about stuff. Sometimes you can get yourself into trouble when you just blindly accept that which you have. Miss Grace Durant, can you pop on for a minute?
Yep.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. Let's explore this profitable versus not profitable. Do you think that companies using this type of BI work would be interested to see by product how profitable things are?
Yes.
Okay. If you were a business leader, which I'm sure you soon will be, if not already you are, where you're at, what about something that's losing money or is barely breaking even? Isn't that a candidate to be gotten rid of?
Sometimes, but like you mentioned earlier this semester, like HP loses money on the printers but makes money on the cartridges.
Give me another example.
Um, oh gosh.
Kind of caught you flat-footed, huh? This
Yep,
is graduate work, man.
it
I'm
is.
looking
It's
for
hard
answers. I'm not looking for questions.
to- Um,
And that's okay. If you can't think of one, we'll have someone else pipe in and help you.
okay.
I think they'll pipe in and help you.
Hopefully.
I see Sean. Can you see Sean's
Yeah,
screen?
video game.
Yeah, video games. So what about movie theaters? You think movie theaters make a lot of money on tickets when they sell tickets to seats?
Some, but they make more off of like the snacks and that kind of stuff.
Very much so. I'll tell you a little secret. 80 to 90% of the movies they show, they lose money at the ticket office. In other words, what I mean by that is the money they collect to sell you the seat license for the showing of that movie, they don't make any money. You factor in the air conditioning, you factor in the employees, you factor in the carpet cleaning, and they don't make any money on selling you the ticket. Yet when they do BI, when studios and theaters like United Artists and Cinemark do BI work, they can't overly focus. They can't overly focus on how much they're losing or barely breaking even on seats, because what's happening is without those seats, they wouldn't sell any popcorn, right?
No.
Yeah, so you got to be careful. Be careful if you start doing BI work. And I'll give you the classic example. I'm glad I have you on the line because I have this great example. There was a company that was losing money, and I won't reveal the company because it's embarrassing to them, but they were losing money. And one of the things they wanted to cut down on was labor. They wanted to cut down on labor. So they started analyzing the salespeople that they were paying the highest salaries to, and they kind of targeted the top three that were making, 3 to 4 times what other people were making, and they made the decision to let go of 2 of them. Is that the picture of insanity? How do salespeople make money?
By
And I'll tell
convincing
you the
people
industry.
to buy
I'll tell
things.
you the industry. In this case, it was car dealerships. How do salespeople at a car dealership make money?
By bargaining with the customers and convincing the customer that they want the car.
That's how the dealership makes money. How does the individual person benefit?
By selling a lot. Commissions.
Commissions. Right, commissions. That's the key thing. So if you sell more, do you get more commissions?
Yes.
Yes, you do. So what are you doing when you're getting rid of 2 of the 3 highest paid salespeople at a dealership?
You're getting rid of higher commissions.
And you're getting rid of your worst salespeople or your best?
Your best.
Your best. You're getting rid of your best salespeople. That's the equivalent of taking a gun and shooting yourself in the foot. And this dealership was doing some blind BI work, and they were just like, hey, these are the people that are driving up our costs. Let's get rid of them. That's like saying, hey, these doctors are doing too much surgery and saving too many lives. We need people who are doing less work. Thank you, Grace. I appreciate you popping on.
Uh-huh.
All right. Enough of those crazy examples. The big point I'm trying to drive home is don't just blindly believe the numbers. You have to interpret the numbers. A lot of BI work now, or a lot of BI modules will have bolt-ons. I'm not going to go through these, but I will hold you responsible for them. Keep in mind that today's lecture is going to have a synchronous component to it, and it's going to have an asynchronous component to it. So be sure that after this session, you don't just fall asleep because you have quite a bit of assigned stuff that's offline. And this is an example of it. I'm not going to go through it. The first two here is like what the good things are that BI can do in terms of data mining and stuff like that. And the second two deal with the dark side or the bad things that can come from BI. Can someone activate their microphone and tell me what is potentially some of the concerns people have with companies data mining their customers?
People are worried about privacy.
Yes, thank you. Bless you for coming on. Thank you. Yeah, they're worried about that. They're worried, like, for example, some people are very uncomfortable with them tracking the location of your car and tracking where you are inside of the store. They're uncomfortable with your prescriptions. Don't you think that some medical agencies are interested in data mining what prescriptions you take?
Yes, but that might actually be illegal.
It's illegal per FERPA. Have some companies been caught doing it? The answer is yes. So thank you. I appreciate you piping on. It's a concern, and I want you to know that this is not just a business intelligence, data mining, data analytics is good, 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 good. It's good. It could also be misused, and that's not even bringing in the political element of potentially political parties being very interested in your activities. Keep in mind the social media platforms, as you well know, when you join Facebook or you join Twitter or whatever you happen to join, pretty much you give away your information. It's you might be able to configure it away from others seeing it, but you can't really configure it away from the company seeing it. This is some of the products that different product. This is some of the products, some of the bolt-ons. For example, IBM has Cognos and SPSS. I've used SPSS quite a bit. It's a statistical package. I've used it in research before. And Oracle has Hyperion, which is a pretty good product. I would say Hyperion's pretty easy to use. And then SAP has two products, Business Objects and Crystal Decisions. And both of them are used as bolt-ons to business intelligence to do data mining. This, again, an example of reactive versus, hang on a second. Reactive versus proactive decision making, and you can see here on the bottom left-hand side. Well, let's do the well, if you want to be fancy, the abscissa and the ordinate, but we'll do XY. Here you have the degree of intelligence as you push out to the right, and here you have the competitive advantage as you go vertically up. And one of the things you're looking at is going from, again, what happened to how many, how often, and where, what exactly is the problem, and what actions are needed. And then when you get into higher and higher competitive advantages with analytics and BI, you start answering deeper questions like, why is this happening? What if these trends continue? What will happen next? You're looking at predictive type stuff. And then what's the best that can happen? Optimization is when you are able to generate your three options, A, B, and C, and you are able to look out and see what is going to happen if you do A, what is going to happen if you do B, and what's going to happen if you do C. And this is at the income statement level, at the balance sheet level, at whatever level it is you're focusing on. I'm curious, has anyone online seen the movie Ex Machina? Okay, it's a pretty resounding no. But if you get a chance to see it, it's out now and might be out on DVD. It'll be out on DVD and stream eventually. But it basically deals with artificial intelligence. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the week. But what was interesting when I saw it to me was that one of the things that was being data mined in that movie was searches. And there's a company that's obviously, the illusion is that it's Google. They don't use the word Google, of course. I think it's called Blue Ice or something. And what they're doing is the founder of it is saying that, you know, a lot of companies are using the searches to identify what people are interested in. And he says in the movie, he says, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in how people think. And that's what we're data mining. You know, we want to see what it is why is that people think the way they do. And that level of analytics is what companies do when they really, really want to optimize their decisions. They're not just looking at what happened. They're looking at why it happened. and that level, that shows an enormous amount of proactivity on the part of a company. This is just a delineation of the different things. I'm not going to sit here and read them to you. I will focus extract, transform, and load. Will move data from one repository to another, and it uses data cleansing techniques. You will see when you get out in the field and start working, assuming you haven't encountered it already, you'll see ETL routines, and the ETLs move the data from one business warehouse to another, from one company's business warehouse to another. Oh, yes, they will. In answer to your question, the videos will be out there, and I'll put it in Blackboard announcements. Thank you. But the ETL programs are crucial to doing a lot of business intelligence work, because you can't, you basically can't move data back and forth between these two different feeds unless you have good ETL programs. Data mining, we're going to sit there. A couple of things under analytics. You have predictive analytics that uses data about the past to predict the future, which of course that's pretty self-explanatory. The one I'm not saying here is prescriptive analytics. Let me write that down, make sure everybody understands it. So you have predictive and you have prescriptive. Prescriptive analytics is more than just looking at the past and trying to predict the future. With prescriptive, you're saying, based on that analysis, this is what we need to do going forward to get the best result possible. Text mining is used if you go to law school or you get into the legal profession. There's an enormous amount of text mining going on, and what it does a lot of times is it'll flow through and look at email text, for example. And one of the things it's really curious about is it wants to see to what extent themes, and by themes I mean THEMES, what kind of themes come from that text mining? And are you able to, for example, pick up on, it's been pretty well established that using text mining, you can pick up on markers of fraud. People use certain adjectives, they use certain adverbs, they use certain nouns when they're engaging in fraud, and it's amazingly easy to start picking up those markers. Talked about that. Let's talk about the data mart. Not to be confused with Kmart. The data mart is a small subset of a data warehouse, and it's usually designed for a specific set of users. So for example, HR might want to do some BI work explicitly on salaried individuals, or they might want to do explicitly a small amount of work on hourly individuals. Generally the reason that is put into place is because what companies want to do is they want the ability to run with higher performance. They don't want to run across millions of records that they're uninterested in. So they don't want to hit the whole data warehouse. They want to hit just what's pertaining to them. I mentioned a minute ago ETLs, where you have extract, transform, and load programs. You'll have these ETLs set up between the data warehouse and the individual data mart at the organizational level, and these things will either constantly feed in real time, or they will go on some kind of batch type system. These are some of the key characteristics in a data warehouse. So let's go over a couple of them. Again, subject oriented. You don't just dump tons and tons of information into a DW. You dump in what you think will be necessary for the subject that's being studied. Mentioned this before, it's stored and not changed except for compelling reasons. So batch updates that are done periodically, that's the only thing that would really change it. And you have reporting over a period of time. We talked about that, and integrated. Let's talk about data governance. Okay, we're kind of changing bases a little bit here. Keep in mind data warehouse and data mart and business intelligence. Obviously those are key components when you're doing work with your ERP database. Data governance is a large concept. Data governance is the idea that data shouldn't just be collected and stored about your company, and data that's brought into the warehouse and brought into your database should not just be willy-nilly, ad hoc, chaotically brought in. It's brought in, and what is brought in with purpose, with strategic purpose. And what used to happen, okay, is companies for the most part used to just throw tons and tons of data into a database, and then they say, let's sort out what we're going to do later. Data governance is the idea that we're going to drive into the data mart and into the data warehouse explicitly what we need to run the business. okay? And we're going to ensure the quality of that data, and we're going to ensure that that data is properly backed up, and we're going to ensure that we have processes around the capture, use, and storage of that data. It's not just collecting a big pool and then hoping that everything turns out all right. The best companies will actually have a data governance committee, and the Googles and the Apples of the world will actually have data governance committees. American Airlines has a data governance committee, where what they're trying to do is they have a cross-functional element. They are empowered by senior management, so it's an acknowledgement by senior executive management that data is important, and the capture of the data and the strategic use of the data is important, and it's a realization that data quality is really important, and how this data is queried is really important. Data cleansing, there's really no companies that I've come into contact with that don't have some dirty data, don't have data that doesn't need to be cleaned up. It's, one of the things you want with data governance is you want to have sound policies on what is the definition of clean data. Okay, so you have guidelines on, what is it that indicates that data needs to be cleansed, and what is it that, whether it's inconsistencies or duplications or missing data, and you set some guidelines around that in terms of enforcing, this is what we call data that needs to be cleansed. A lot of times you'll have data that comes into the data warehouse that has different formats, so you want to try to have some format consistency. Enforcing data integrity. In other words, if the information that's captured in the data warehouse is junky, if it has missing components, if it has components that's flawed, if it doesn't encompass all the data related to that subject or that business event, that creates a problem, and you're trying to enforce that. It's about having a process of deriving or finding missing data. Okay, a lot of companies, you'll say, well, how many records, in your data warehouse are missing? And they'll say, well, as far as we know, everything's in there. That's not really data governance. That's data guessing. You don't really know. Eliminating duplicate data, I made allusion to that. Keep in mind that when you constantly are detecting duplicate data, you shouldn't just clean it and get rid of it and fix it. It may be an indication of fraud. So here's a couple of best practices for BI work. One of them, and companies, believe me, let me tell you what companies want to do, and then I'll tell you what they should do. What companies want to do is they want to dump a whole bunch of information into a data set, and then they want to do a bunch of fancy queries against it, and then they want to impress their boss with, look at all this stuff we discovered. This can lead to some flawed assumptions. This can lead to a lot of problems. Let's look at some things that lead to better. One of them is clearly defining what the business objectives are. You have to have a business case for the business intelligence you're doing, okay? And it has to be justified. You can't just say, well, we're going to, look at the data and try to figure out if we find some relationships, okay? A lot of companies that have, interestingly enough, that have BI work will have actually mathematicians on the payroll, and the mathematicians will be given a business case in terms of, we want to find out, in which of the geographic divisions we might have opportunities for increasing sales in the month of January or the last 2 weeks of January or something like that. But you have a specific strategic business case. You don't just say, well, go in there and start poking around and see what you find. There is a place for that, but that's not called business intelligence. That's just called data coherence, and you're looking around. BI has to have intelligence to it. You have to have a business strategic purpose for it. You have to standardize and clean dirty data. You'll see the importance of that when I show you the Salesforce.com video. And one of the things you'll see with that demonstration is, if you have bad data, you literally are coming into contact with bad information. And what you're doing is making bad decisions based on bad data. You have to standardize data. You can't bring in like apples and oranges and pears and then make any sense of it. And you have to clean it. Keep in mind that you always are going to have some degree of dirty data. It's particularly prevalent if you're bringing outside data in. That's not because you do a magnificent job of running your own data. It's just that you have a lot more potential for format inconsistencies. Keep in mind that if you buy a couple of million rows from Facebook of your company's being mentioned and stuff, Just because the first row has a certain format, that doesn't mean that the 750th million has the right format. You want to integrate data using the best structuring alternatives available. The structure of data, how wide it is, how many characters it is it numeric? Is it alphanumeric? Should it tolerate alphanumeric? Should it only tolerate numeric? That fidelity, that reliability of data to where it's the same month after month after month in terms of formatting and in terms of structuring is an important component for BI. You can't have formats shifting around and you make sense of anything that's associated with the analytics. You have to train users. Companies have a tendency to put BI solutions in place and then maybe show people, hey, this is what you do, and they'll show them a cool trick in it where you're deriving, gross margin by, the last 2 hours of the workday. And that's all fine and good, but you have to train users to get the most meaningful answers. You see this, sometimes you'll see an example of this with smartphones. Your grandparents will have a smartphone, whatever, and no one's really training them. There's really no formal training process on how they can maximize or optimize their use of the phone. And it's not unusual, as you well know, for a grandparent to realize, a year into the ownership of the phone that, oh, wow, I can check the outside temperature with my phone. And it's just because they've never been trained. You can't just give hardware and software to people and have them and hope that they can just find their way. You want to quickly deliver reports that provide the most value. Whatever provides the most value to an organization, you want to deliver that very quickly. And then you tweak it. Companies will sometimes get into trouble with mission critical information. And what they'll do is they'll sit there and say, well, we haven't got it perfected yet, but we'll have it perfected in 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, well, we're going to perfect it in another 2 weeks. And if you're not careful, you can go multiple months not delivering reports that are crucial, and what they do is nobody gets any information. If the report you are providing has limitations, provide the report and communicate the limitations. Don't just sit on it. Deploy with the idea that there are answers out there. Okay, when you have a BI solution, you will always have people that don't believe you can get anything, of importance from it. You have naysayers that are like, at the end of the day, I think we could run our business better just by gut. This is not an argument for, hey, get rid of those people. What it is an argument for is that you want to go into this with the belief system that BI information is valuable and that you can get something out of it that potentially could steer the company in a better direction. You want to, and this is difficult to do for companies, you want to outline the specific benefits that you expect to derive from it and then grade it. Okay, every half year or every year, you want to do a reality check and test and say, did we get the benefits that we anticipated getting out of the collection of this information and its analysis? It's not unusual in some of the clients I've worked with that they say, we expect to get from this BI initiative A, B, and C. And then at the end of the year when they do, an examination of what they got out of it, it's not unusual for them to say, we really didn't get that much from A, and we didn't get that much from B, but we got a lot from F, G, and H, and I, and J. So this is not an argument for be perfect, but it's an argument for at least define some specific benefits that you expect to get, and then on a regular basis test it and make sure that this truly does exist and truly can help your business. Let's talk about business performance management. You may remember when we were talking about business process reengineering, and business process reengineering is the drastic change to a company trying to save it. You're doing a drastic change to the company to see if you can save it. One of the ways that companies avoid having to do a business process reengineering is through business performance management. Sometimes it's called business process management. And those two words are synonymous: business performance management and business process management. And what you're trying to do is on an ongoing basis manage the business performance. And that doesn't just mean checking to make sure that what you've always done, you still continue to do well. It's, answering the question, what else could you do? Basically, it consists of various frameworks that you organize, that's used to organize and automate and you're constantly trying to, the Japanese have an expression for this, kaizen. Let me see if I can type it in. So, kaizen. And kaizen is this theory that you're always trying to improve processes. Okay, and this is obviously with business intelligence. This is one of the things you're trying to do. It's about capturing smart metrics and processes and trying to drive business performance forward, not just accepting what's come before. BPM is this idea that you can bridge between long-term and day-to-day operations. Day-to-day operations is it's basically the finance and accounting function of day-to-day, every single day, getting into the database what you need. And long-term strategies are ones that don't evolve in one day or in 1 week. They evolve over multiple time periods. Business performance management sits in the middle. It sits in the middle in terms of measuring. Yes, we know we have day-to-day operations. We know we have strategic long-term operations. But what about that middle? That middle that may indicate that we're heading into areas that we need to address. One of the ways companies do this is with business metrics. They'll provide basically company performance on some kind of basis. Underneath business metrics, companies will capture key performance indicators, and these are tied to individual users. Now, business metrics is measuring the business. Key performance indicators is actually tying it to a department and or a person. This is examples. Let me put these up and we'll look at them. Business intelligence appeals to operations users and line of business managers. So you have operational users and business managers that use BI. Business performance management, since it's more related to measuring numbers and measuring how we're doing, it's more related to financial application users. So accountants a lot of times will do a lot more business performance management than they will business intelligence. BI embeds this metrics analysis within internal processes to help users. So the regular day-to-day internal processes are embedded with BI processes to see if you can make good strategic or tactical planning decisions. Whereas BPM focuses on defined metrics. Okay, so it's not, business performance management will tend to use metrics or measurements that are in place, and they're trying to see if users can improve processes and manage and increase performance. You see a lot of this in manufacturing, right? With manufacturing, business intelligence might be at the strategic level for the plant to see, what potential opportunities exist out there within the plant that are not being used. Whereas business performance management is focused on what's happening underneath our feet and how what is happening right now in the plant can be improved. BI provides data that's needed to answer essential business issues. It's used to plan and act based on an analysis of business problems. So you define some business problems and you're trying to data mine and see if you can improve it through BI analysis. Whereas business performance management will have predefined scorecards and predefined dashboards, and you're measuring to see how the organization is doing on its performance. Business intelligence tends to be more free-form, okay, so it tends to be more what-if related, and business performance management tends to not be what if, it tends to be what, and in terms of what just happened. Let's talk about the balanced scorecard. I famously am not a big fan of balanced scorecards, but I think it's important you get exposed to the fact that they're out there. Balanced scorecards are an idea that you structure a company and measure different things that are important. You map and translate complex business information into something that's understandable to everyone in the organization. One of the reasons that I'm not a big fan of BS, and I'm not trying to be cute with that acronym, although I think it's quite fitting, is that understandable to everyone in the organization. Boy, that's a sweeping statement. A lot of times a balanced scorecard, what it measures is what's important to someone in upper management, not what's really, really important to the company. It's a bolt-on to ERP, so you can buy a balanced scorecard, bolt it onto the module that exists for business BI. It's a management system. It's not just a measurement system. It doesn't just measure stuff. It also is used by management to manage the company. It focuses attention on the company's most important goals first. In that, it makes sure that each organizational individual action supports these goals. One of the reasons I'm not a big fan of BS, I don't know if anyone could ever make that sweeping statement that makes sure that with a strong emphasis on every organizational individual action supports this goal. what you tend to find more in business, it's some of the goals advance, some of the actions you take, individual and organizational, advance towards the goal, and some don't. Some, it's kind of childish to believe that everything is going to propel you towards these goals. A couple of different measures that exist, and this is important. Please don't take my reluctance to have a lot of belief in balanced scorecard as, hey, time to turn off, time to not pay attention to anything. Please don't take that message from that. But this particularly is important. I think lagging indicators that you have in a balanced scorecard are important. They provide knowledge about past activity, and they basically tell you something after the fact, right? They tell you something after the fact. You have, in contrast to that, you have leading indicators. Okay, leading indicators are things that signal that something might be coming. So when you start looking at a balanced scorecard and you start noticing, for example, that receivables are starting to climb, right? If you start seeing that receivables in your client set is starting to climb, that might be an indication that the economy might be going into the pot, might be going bad, and you want to try to address that pretty quickly. You don't want to get caught behind and then be trying to figure out, how you're going to fix all this mess at the company when it's already happened. Ms. Katie Dillard, do you mind piping in right quick? Katie, on chat, I want you to tell me, what do you think is a leading indicator that the economy is turning around? What do you think is a leading indicator that the economy, the U.S. economy, is turning around? You're running a company, and I want you to tell me what might signal to you that the economy is turning around. Well, that's what we're in business for. We're hoping that sales go up. We want to try to get the business to go up, not down. That's a good one, Jessica. Yeah, people will tend to start, when they have optimism about the future, they will tend to take out loans. Let me switch. Thank you, Katie. Abraham, can you pipe in?
Yes, I'm online.
Thanks for piping in. Would you like to be rich?
Of course.
Do you think if you knew what a leading indicator in the stock market going up, do you think that might be valuable information?
Yes, very valuable.
Are you more curious, if you're an investor, are you more curious about lagging indicators that stocks are going to go up, or leading indicators that they're going to go up?
Leading.
Yes, and that's how we run companies. We run companies by looking through the windshield, not through the back shield, right? Not through the back windshield. I will give you a tip, and when you become rich, will you give me a little money?
Yeah, of course.
I'm kind of playing with you, but a really strong leading indicator that the economy is turning around, and this has been established through some data mining, is large equipment being sold by Caterpillar. Are you familiar with the company Caterpillar?
Yeah, they make all the big construction type vehicles.
And they sell only in the U.S.?
No, they sell everywhere.
They sell everywhere. Have you ever been curious in the Wall Street Journal why they dedicate an entire page to pork bellies?
No, I guess I didn't realize that. No.
Yeah. Do you think the sale of pork bellies indicates that people are eating more bacon?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's an indicator. That's a strong indicator, but not as strong an indicator that the stock market is going to go up than the sales of heavy land-moving equipment. Now, what do you suspect the reverse is? If Caterpillar is selling less and less land-moving equipment, do you think that might be a good time to sell?
Yeah, that's probably a good time to get out of the
Yeah, it's a
market.
good time to sell. Well, I've given you your investing tip for the day, and I did it so we could illustrate a leading and a lagging indicator. There's a bunch of them out there. You can data mine a lot of stuff. Consumption of alcohol, consumption. Interestingly enough, consumption of alcohol will go up a lot of times when the economy is on its way down too. So you have to at some point here you have to be kind of a shrink to figure out what the numbers mean. Thank you, Abraham, for piping in.
You're welcome.
Companies use these lagging and leading indicators uh, to try to get an idea of what's coming next. And the balanced scorecard is usually where the markers, the metrics associated with lagging and leading indicators are usually captured by these balanced scorecards. Lagging indicators will tend to be behind the curve of change, and leading indicators, as I indicated, are going to be in front of it. These are some of the different perspectives on the BS. How do we look to shareholders? On a learning and growth perspective, you'll have, can we continue to improve and create value? This is one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of Balanced Scorecard. If you look at these questions, how do our customers view us? It's a very open question. This is a very open-ended question, and one that I find to be very difficult to answer with numbers. But it is this thought process that you can use numbers to give you insights into how customers view you. This is an example of different balanced scorecard key performance indicators. So for example, what you do is at the financial level, one of the things you capture in your BS KPI would be cash flow. Cash flow is obviously important. It's not everything. There's a lot of companies that have, especially tech companies at the beginning, technology companies at the beginning, tend to have low cash flow. Amazon has a lot of cash flow, but they tend to plow it back into the business, which that's not necessarily bad for you if you're an investor in Amazon. You might want them to be on the leading edge of online retailing. At the customer level, you'd measure things like on-time delivery rate, the return rate, how often things are returned, whatever, customer satisfaction. You're choosing to capture different elements of information about the customer. In learning and growth, you might capture things like new patents pending, the absence rate. I can tell you at UNT, we don't happen to have a balanced scorecard KPI, but research articles published would be something that would be of key interest to people who are looking at it from accreditation. The number of credit hours taught is something that's important. I'm not going to sit here and read you the slide, whatever, but these are some of the key things that are captured in KPIs. Some of the benefits, because we do need to go over some of the benefits. Sometimes there's more benefit in the act of doing something than there is in the end product. One of the things you have is you're able to clarify your strategy. One of the things that happens to a lot of companies is they don't know what they're trying to do with their data, and they're not sure what it is they want to measure. And a lot of times when you have a good balanced scorecard, it helps kind of focus a company. It provides a central source of key information. If you have a balanced scorecard system bolted onto your business intelligence, a lot of companies get a lot of benefit from the actual focused attention that is put on that individual information. It creates attention, directed to vital issues. Companies a lot of times have trouble focusing on what's important. Or what they think is important is not actually what's important, and that gets them into trouble. So it's a good, to the extent that it's able to identify vital issues and direct attention to them, then the BS has some value to it. One of the key things that a balanced scorecard should do when it's well designed, and notice I use the word when, is it'll provide advance warning of stuff that's becoming problematic. I'll give you a good example. I'm not going to go backwards, but one of the things we have there is returns. Auto manufacturers a lot of times will keep very close tabs on service calls. So if you're Toyota Motor Corporation and you put out a model, especially a new model, you'll be tapped into the database of all your dealership network. And one of the things you're trying to pick up on is patterns of certain things getting serviced because they appear to be breaking, whether it's warranty work or it's after the warranty period. And a lot of times companies can start getting a picture that they might have a recall coming. In other words, that they might have a problem with a recall. And this is an important component of a balanced scorecard, the ability to identify that trouble might be brewing, that you might be having trouble with it. A good example of this too is Bluebell ice cream. One of the things they picked up on kind of quickly, but they were ignoring it as the problem. If you ignore your balanced scorecard, it doesn't much matter. Is they started noticing a lot of problems with health and the connection to their product. If to the extent that they would be able to prevent this would have helped them a great deal. It aligns organizations around a certain strategy. So if you have a good balanced scorecard, you have a strategy, and assuming that it's the right strategy, you have the company aligned around it. Whatever. It organizes information. That's great. And it reduces information overload. Now that's another key component in a balanced scorecard, that a lot of times if you capture everything and analyze everything and pay attention to everything, what you're doing is paying attention to nothing. To the extent that you can make some calls on what's important and focus on those with a balanced scorecard, that has a certain value. Limitations. This is kind of my slide in terms of why I think BS has problems. A lot of times management doesn't have a whole lot of follow through. Okay, they measure stuff and they notice stuff, but they're kind of paralyzed like deer in the headlights. They don't really know what to do or what to make of this information. The easy thing to do is to collect it, report it, look at it, point to it, and basically do nothing. If you cannot balance scorecard yourself into profitability, okay, so let's say that you decide that you're going to sell snow cones in the North Pole. You can measure all the stuff you want. You can do an enormous amount of analytics around the numbers you choose for your metrics and stuff. If it's a bad business, it's just a bad business. And sometimes companies, I'll give you an example that's near and dear. I used to work with Blockbuster as a consultant and stuff. And it was amazing in meetings how often they would talk about late fees, and how late fees were the most profitable by far component of their business. And it's not that they were engaging policies to maximize late fees, but it was interesting how much they talked about it and how much they measured it. They were actually measuring something that was one of the millstones around their neck. They needed to have a system with no late fees, that streamed actual video. Companies, a lot of times, a balanced scorecard will force them to change their culture. If you have a balanced scorecard and it's measuring that you're not good at something, a lot of times companies have a tendency to just say, well, that's just the way we are, and it makes it, sometimes a balanced scorecard is not enough to drive change into an organization, which of course is the purpose of business performance management. This last video on slide 106 is not assigned, okay? So don't worry about it. We will cover this one next week, or not next week, the next time we get together. I want to stop here, and I want to ask if anyone has any questions. Okay, let me, Kayla Schaefer, can you pipe in right quick? I assume you don't have a microphone this morning. Is that correct? Okay, no big. Don't worry about it. Kayla, have you ever worked with any business intelligence at one of the places you've worked at? Okay. Are you familiar with Panera, the restaurant? Okay. Panera is a company that's doing quite a bit of input, where a lot of the stuff is being input on iPads and stuff like that. I think there's a Panera north of us here on 380, and I know they're going with an iPad solution. I've had some students tell me, I haven't been in a long time, but I think Chili's is also doing where you check in or you're able to order with an iPad. Is that correct? Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Kayla, thank you for piping in. Tien, can you pipe in?
Hello.
Hi, Tien. Thanks for popping on. Have you used the system at Chili's?
I have, but the first time I used it, it wasn't working, the payment method. I think the second time I came back, it worked.
Okay. Did you notice people around you using
And I
it,
think
or was it being kind of ignored?
it was during like an off time, so there weren't many people there, so I don't know.
Okay. What kind of information, what kind of business intelligence information could you pull from one of these systems? If they're doing it on iPads and stuff, as a executive at a company at Chili's, what kind of things are you interested in terms of what people are putting into these iPads?
I mean, I guess you can kind of see the popular items that are being ordered.
Okay, that's good. That's good. What might you be able to measure the effectiveness if you move menu items around on the screen? Might you notice that sales go up and go down?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Would you notice the demand for certain items going up and down depending on the placement on the iPad?
Oh, yeah. So like the interface would be important, how they set things up.
What about dynamic pricing? Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Tell me what dynamic pricing is, Tien.
It's when, I mean, I guess I can kind of compare it to toll roads. You know, a certain time of day, you know, the charging would be higher or lower depending on traffic flow.
Okay. 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 Thanks, Tien, for piping in. I appreciate it. Let's see. Let's continue the conversation. Mr. Michael Powell, can you pipe in?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Let's stay on the example of Chili's. We had a definition given to us by Tien about dynamic pricing. Do you think it's ethical? Do you think it's ethical for two different tables to be charged a different amount for cheese fries?
No. Not at the same time.
Can you speak louder?
No, not at the same time. I mean, if we were doing it at the same time in the same restaurant, I would think that's not ethical.
Why do airlines do it then? That's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have no idea why they do
Let me
it.
give you a definition, because you'll have this happen. You'll have this happen with BI type analysis, and these devices, especially in restaurants and stuff like that, are allowing dynamic pricing for the first time. Let me give you a definition of price discrimination. Okay, price discrimination means that my cost structure is identical between two customers, and I choose to charge one more than the other. Okay, so the argument made by airlines in court, successfully up until now, is that if people buy their tickets at certain times, we are able to realize a higher gross margin or a lower gross margin. We're choosing our gross margin, but we're not discriminating. We're not saying people with brown eyes should be charged more. Okay, we're not saying people with long hair should be charged less. That's price discrimination, where there's really no justification other than punitive, or you just don't like a certain group of people and that kind of stuff. So airlines, for the most part, especially in blind platforms where they don't know who's buying what, in theory, every single click of an airline ticket could be a different price, right? Every single one could be a different price. We're headed more and more with this type of stuff. We're headed more and more into problems where some people think that price discrimination is starting to happen. Have you ever gotten gasoline? Have you ever seen gasoline at a certain price, and then when you came back down the road the other way, it was a different price?
Oh yeah, multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, some people have even reported. I don't know if anybody on the line has had this happen, but they've actually reported that they saw the price, at the pump on the sign, and then when they pulled up to get gas, it had changed by the time they stopped the car.
Never had
Go ahead.
that happen. I was saying I've never had that one happen. I just had as I drove by later the day the price changed.
You know who's hot to trot to do this, and is doing it right now is toll roads, right? Toll roads. What they would like to do is they would like to see what your driving behavior is, and based on that driving behavior, they would like to change the pricing. Right? They don't want to be stuck with they don't want $1.20 per 5 miles or something like that. They want to be able to have dynamic pricing. When do you think a toll authority might want to charge more versus less? What time of day?
I would say they want to charge more versus less in the morning and the evening times, whenever people are mainly on the road coming from work or going to work.
Yeah, the big push. Yeah, the big push in and the big push out. They've even oh, interesting. Caitlin's saying they were charging more during the snowstorms. That's interesting. You even see cases where, like if it's 3 in the morning, they might even have a negligible charge, if anything at all. What happens, of course, is they're not able to get anybody to drive at 3 in the morning, at least in certain areas, because there's nobody on the line. There's absolutely nobody, nobody driving. So that creates basically no demand. I appreciate you for piping on. Thank you. Okay, let's go over a little bit of housekeeping here. First of all, does anybody have any questions before we proceed? Okay, sounds like we're good. We will have the last lecture of this semester, this very quick semester, Thursday. Okay, and that'll be our last lecture. Right now, I do not know. I'll give you the time, so be monitoring the time. It depends. As you well know, we're going through finals week, and I need to look at my final schedule and see how I can work it out. So it'll either start at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. So be sure and look for that. And everybody knows that our final is on Saturday, so it's important that everybody be tuned into that. I've had like 2 people say that they have booked flights, or they're going out of town on Saturday. It's important for you to note that the only opportunity I have to give the test early is going to be Thursday. Now that presents a problem because Thursday's lecture, although it's going to be short, it's not going to be very long. You'll actually be taking the final on a day in which the last final lecture is done. So be mindful that what you're looking at is probably a 2 to 3 hour at best turnaround between the last lecture and when you would have to take the final. So be mindful of that. Thursday is the only time I can give it early. And I have limited seats. We can't have everybody take it early. Other than that, what I want to do is I want to close our session. Be sure and monitor as soon as we get off. It's very important, and I can't stress enough that you monitor Blackboard announcements, because immediately after the session, I'm going to post the videos that I expect you to watch, and the videos address kind of live demonstrations of what we're talking about with business intelligence. Does anybody have any questions about Thursday or Saturday of this week? This would be a good time to pipe in. Have you noticed that you have an enormous number of deliverables this Thursday? Please reply with why or no. Okay, I'll just make sure. This could be a lonely business on my end. It could be kind of talking into a dark tube. I want to make sure everybody's engaged and knows there's a lot of deliverables on Thursday. This is one of the reasons that today's lecture is a little shorter, although, again, don't blow off the video content because it's important from a test perspective. So again, use this time wisely. Good luck on your other final tomorrow, Wednesday. I think that's when somebody said the ethics one is. Oh yeah, good. SAP question. What I'm looking for in terms of the final screen is you will see on the final screen. Let me get it up here. If you hold on 1 second, please. Okay, let me activate my web right quick. And what I'll do is show you. It's very difficult to see because the quality is not that good. But what you're going to see when you're on that final screen for stage 5 is you're going to have the number of senders as 1. That's that number right there. And you're going to have the receivers of 3. Okay, so you're going to have a relationship of 1 to 3, and that shows, and this is going to be 0, that shows that you have a successful stage 5. If you don't get 1 for 3, something is wrong in the past. What some people, I know it's not very big, unfortunately. What I'm hoping is you can just see the gist, that it's going to say senders, senders is 1 and receivers is 3. If you don't get a 1 for 3 relationship like that, let me put the deal back. If you don't get a 1 for 3 relationship like that, what that indicates is that something has gone wrong with your SAP. That does not mean you're going to get a 0 and that's the end of the world and you're getting nothing, but it does mean something's gone wrong. Some of you have asked me, what do I do if on SAP, I seem to be stuck and I can't. What I usually advise people to do is that they go back a stage and redo the previous stage. A lot of times there's something that was done wrong in the previous stage, and when it's done correctly in the previous stage, then the stage that they're on clears up. So I'll recommend that. As a last resort, well, there's a couple of different resorts here because we're so tight of time. One thing you can do is get a new FS number and start from scratch. That gives you a brand new production database that you can start from again. So that's an option. The other thing you can do is, I do have a video. I mean, I know every semester I'll have somebody will say, what you've asked us to do is impossible. It can't be done. There's got to be something that is wrong in the instruction set, given that the instruction set in the first few stages is pretty good. Then after that, it's counting on you to pay more attention and to learn as you go through the semester. I can show you the video. I can give you the video, and I charge my students about 15% of their grade to see the video, and then they can get their database correct. I've got a question from Saad here. No. Good question, Saad. If you receive a new FS number, in my book, you're just starting from scratch, and you don't have to do anything special. Again, we're looking for that senders 1, receivers 3 relationship at the very end of the SAP assignment. But I'm worried only because time is so tight, right? I know I've had a couple of students that are having some trouble with SAP, and you just don't have the time. Let me put on the print screen, let me put a better quality image out on Blackboard announcements. Will that work for everyone? Okay, I'll put a high quality picture out there. Basically what I had was just kind of a cookbook thing off my phone here, but I'll put a high quality picture of what I'm looking for. So if you get all the way to the end, what you should see is that 1 for 3 relationship. But I'm worried because there's not a lot of time to navel gaze in this 2.5-week, 3-week course. So to maximize points on SAP, you might be in a better position just taking the 15% point degradation. It's better to make an 85 than to get 100% of 0. That's worse. Any questions for me before we disband for the day? Leslie, you're saying if it turns out that we turned in something different, what would you like us to do? What I would like you to do is give me your FS number, and I will check your database. And checking your FS number, and by that I mean send me an email. That way will identify your name and stuff, and I'll double check. If you've got a problem, I'll communicate back to you, say you've got a problem. How many folks are through with how many folks are through with SAP? I know I've got a few people that are finished. If you finish with SAP, yeah, that's what I thought. I've got some people that are already done. Okay. Okay, very good. You have until 10 minutes before midnight on Thursday to get your deliverables in. Okay, somebody asked a good question. They said on the presentation, the PowerPoint audio narrated presentation, should it be configured for click-throughs? In other words, you're able to click through one by one, or should it be on autoplay? My preference is that it's on click-through, but I mean, there's no point degradations associated with it. Either one is fine, either autoplay or where I hit the space bar or whatever and go through your presentation. I am looking for professionalism on it, so try to get your two best speakers. That's the reason I don't have every single person speak. It's important too that everybody contributes to it, though, and by that I mean no free riders. If somebody's just getting a complete free ride, I need to know about it early, not after it's turned in. Any more questions about the deliverables that exist for Thursday? Yes, yeah, 2 is a minimum, Sam. As a minimum, you can use every single person, and I think that's impressive. I think that, in my eyes, that's impressive that everybody spoke, even if at least just to one slide. I mean, I think that's an important component in this. I used to be more rigid about this, and by that I mean I used to require that every single person has to present in digital media or in brick. I have gotten to where I've started to notice that some people, that's just not their forte, so I haven't really emphasized it as much. At the end of the day, I want a quality product from the group. Yes, very good. Thank you, Alicia, for asking that question. You have to be in APA 6. Let me put this up here. You have to be in APA 6. Don't worry. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and scrutinize between 5 and 4, and but you have to be APA. What you want to do is Google ALNet. I've communicated this before. Google ALNet APA. I just put it on the chat, and it will take you to an area that has excellent resources on what APA means. You don't need an abstract. That's a good question. Don't worry about an abstract. It's a good question, Colby. When you say with annotated instructions, Dylan, what do you mean? What is an annotated instruction?
Oh, there's a sample paper that shows it's like a complete paper that's fully, written, and it's got annotations of the rules for in-text citations and things like that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I only caught a piece of it, and I thought you were asking a question.
Is it okay if we already wrote an abstract?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. And the abstract sometimes is good because it kind of tends to organize your thoughts around what is this paper about. But it's not explicitly required. Abstracts, just for y'all's edification, abstracts are usually required when you're trying to publish. Okay. And believe it or not, I've had at least 2 students over the years that have had papers of a high enough quality to where I recommended that they publish to a certain journal, or attempt to publish. So.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Watch your page minimums. Be careful with your page minimums. I do expect you to meet at least the minimum. If you go over, that's okay, but at least meet the page minimum. The cover page, the title page it's not part of the minimum page requirement. If you created an abstract, it doesn't satisfy a page requirement. And be sure you have a citation sheet at the end. The citation sheets also do not encompass the page minimum. Is there any questions about the paper? No, I don't want any kind of hard copies. It'll be uploaded to Blackboard. Thank you, Alicia. Good question. No, I don't want a hard copy. If I want a hard copy, I'll just print it out. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And then as soon as I sign off, I'm going to put the video content that's required. And be sure you consume that. Good luck on your test Wednesday. Otherwise, I will see you online on Thursday morning. Goodbye.